We are live at M Galleries with Pete Mountfor. Hi.
Hello, folks. We made it across the ocean. This is 2020. Anybody who is in on a Friday night in the UK, in London, welcome.
Welcome.
I'm glad we managed to keep you away from the pub. Anyway, yeah, so 2020, you've probably seen some stuff on it because it's been going on social media. This project came about roughly about 18 months ago when me and Marq approached Frank because we had some leads on that. And we thought about doing something, and then the idea came up with that we should do something collaborative, that artists exchanged ideas.
Right.
The idea 2020 vision was played with a bit to start with. We were in the year 2020, of course, and the pandemic. And then Frank actually came up, and then we developed it, the idea of the artist linkage across. Frank, do you want to add anything to that, perhaps?
Oh, sure. Yeah, the using the 20 words for the sensation of 2020, or to describe the sensation of 2020. So we had the cross-Atlantic exchange, right? So between the British and UK artists, or US and UK artists, right?
Yeah. So the idea was that each artist would be paired together. We were going to pair them, but then we actually, in the end, did it out of a random draw, where they were just paired from each side, and whoever you got, you were with. And then from that, we gave the artists each contact, and they were told to send each other 20 words. It could be a list of words, it could be a poem, it could be a short story,
just
it
a
could
total.
be whatever, and so on. And in fact, the words, you might see some of them as we go around. Some of the work, they're underneath the pieces. They're in paper at the moment. There is actually plexiglass panels that are coming pretty soon. And then some artists collaborated quite closely. And when Marq will speak later on, him and the artist Ellie Trubert, they work together very closely. Other artists, we had communication. We worked more independently, and that's fine. It was the idea you would get a mix of both as such. So we're the only two of the UK artists that are over at the moment. One other was meant to come, but unfortunately, Darren, hope you're watching, unfortunately couldn't make it. He's sorely missed. The show was on for a month till the end of April here. It's going to another space, which is just round the corner here, in the summer, a bit later in the summer. Yeah, July 2020. Coming to London in the autumn, September probably. We've got to nail those dates down yet, but it'll probably be September. And that's going to be at one of the ASC project spaces, which is in the Courthouse Studios in Kennington, just south of central London, and that will be, as I said, in September. So I think at this point we'll start looking at some work. So I think Marq can start with his one, and then I'll come back after that.
Yeah, mine.
Okay.
Yes, for sure.
I wasn't sure about that.
Yeah, well, this is mine over here. It's sort of, the role of like working with a partner and creating a piece of work in response to 20 words was, it's a bit alien, really. It's definitely has a novelty to it. And to pin 20 words down as an option, so it's just for me to choose 20 words to send to Ellie. I think that was like, I don't know, 3 or 4 months to come up with 20 words. But I wasn't the only one going through that. Ellie was kind of forwards and backwards with words as well. And we were kind of erasing and crossing out words. But we gave ourselves a deadline. And I was lucky. I had mine. I didn't get an email or a text. I got a postcard. I got postcards, rather, and an envelope packed with her words that had been selected for me. And I was able to kind of pin them up around my studio and think about what was going on. I suppose, the words, well, I'll share those with you, really.
Excellent.
So, I don't know how everyone else worked. This has kind of been kept very secretive, the whole process.
Each artist worked independently. Yeah.
But I had the 20 words, 3 that were really prominent. So the word magic, broken, and reparations. They're the ones that I took off with. I kind of circled them and highlighted them and decorated them and drew them. And they sort of resonated with me. when thinking about 2020, and I think the other problem, the other issue to deal with was that 2020 didn't keep still. It wasn't something that was fixed. It's a conveyor belt of events that just didn't stop, and that sort of like barrage of change that we had from 2020 and 2021, they impacted. And so magic and broken and reparations, they were the prominent words, and I took those away with me and carried them through the summer. And that summer I was in Poland and spending a lot of time staring across at a range of hills and watching clouds rushing across from the east to the west, and again talking with Ellie a lot. For some reason, clouds felt that they summed up an element of the words we were using. This rush of words. Broken, magic, and reparations. Watching how clouds break as they travel over the landscape, and then reform depending on the current or the moisture or whatever. But when you're sitting in one space and watching movement of clouds that break and then reform and then change shape and mutate or disappear, vanish altogether, there was something about it that seemed pretty pertinent. So, and we both picked up on that, and you kind of, I think we have to go to it. We have to see this with Ellie's work as well.
Yeah.
And in the small detail here. And for some reason, we both felt that referencing this sort of the movement of the air was something that we wanted to work with, and we were trying to keep this separate. That was the other thing, because the artists were trying to, it was, here's your 20 words, and we're not really gonna, there's scope to work. I mean, as always, you can't really restrict creativity, and the processing of 20 words as well is the only way that I thought I could analyse them was by creating a process to analyse them. You can't just process without.
Do you feel pressure you had to take all 20 on board?
Not initially. I had my 3. I took the 3 of the 20 and saw the summer through and thought about with magic of there's without going too much into it. Well,
that's why we're here.
Yeah, I suppose I was thinking about the human soul and how the soul may move on. How well, we're a planet full of souls, I suppose. I was feeling quite spiritual over the summer, watching the clouds moving, so I stuck with souls and magic and reparations and souls being repaired. So we were both on the same. We were both having the same sort of feeling, Ellie and I, which was really good, and it kind of cemented us. So the summer was spent making drawings of clouds and thinking, how are these clouds going to, is this a good thing? Well, yeah, of course it's a good thing. But by September, I thought I'm missing out on 17 other words. So I drew myself back to introspection, closed, esteemed, escaped, immersion, insulated, isolated, mindful, mindless, break, and awake. And I just thought, right, okay, how? And I'm a visual person, and so I needed to visualize this. And it happened by seeing Hieronymus Bosch painting, which is a concert in the egg, which is it's like a crazy painting of an egg, this sort of thing, egg-shaped. Only there are figures captured in the egg, and they're making music, and they're trying to create some sort of order, but there are these 10, 11 figures trapped in an egg, breaking out. And yet, even though the egg is broken, it's still whole, and there are holes punched into the egg, but it keeps its whole, which was fragility being expressed as well as wholeness. There were quite a few elements of Ellie's words that seemed to be summarised, and that was one thing I did share with Ellie. at that point. I'd sent her this image of Horace Bosch's concert in the Egg, and I thought, I finally got a way into this piece for her.
Right.
Yeah, I took it from there, really. And the other words came about, and, you know, so there's, I probably made 4 or 5, 6 works focused on the egg, and I knew I wanted to have 2 eggs, and put all my eggs in one basket to some extent.
Very nice.
Yeah, you know, they're all there. They're kind of broken and formed at the same time. There are still clouds in here.
Yeah, depression, they're sunny side up.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. But I think this. I suppose. I mean, I guess I don't know what you two will think later, but this was a process, you know. And it was about how do you process? How do you engage with someone else's ideas? I mean, I'm really.
I didn't go that way in an intense way, because the way, as I'll come on to it, it's my turn. It wasn't presented to me like that. But you know, I can see what you mean. It all depends on how the interaction and how the presentation of it comes together.
The exchange.
I'm completely solitary.
Ellie will be around later, and she'll obviously add something to this. Even if you watch the recording, you'll hear, and she can talk about her.
Oh, of course.
Her take on it particularly.
Yeah, we're gonna be streaming all day. So yeah.
And obviously anyone in the UK that is watching, we don't expect you to stay with it.
Of course. Well,
anyone in the US for that matter.
And just please, for those who are watching, please, this is casual, so please put a comment in. We can respond to it live, you know, or put a comment in later, and we'll respond to it later.
Hi, or just you know.
But I do actually have a question for you, Mark.
Go.
So What's that?
Do you know who it's from?
Oh no, for me.
I see.
My question inside my brain.
Right.
But what kind of words were you expecting? So from Ellie, or like when you heard 20 words, what did you think was going to come to you? Did you have any? Well, actually, that's probably. Did you have any expectations?
I did because I changed my 20 words a few times, and I thought about words that could have a double meaning.
Okay.
And I had the feeling that Ellie was going to do the same. And interestingly, she almost did. You know, we were on the same. We felt quite connected, and we definitely developed a friendship. I mean, I don't think that wasn't written into the contract.
No, not necessarily. Yeah,
become friends. But we I think we're connected with the work. But yeah, you know, I suppose. Make, unmake, do, undo. That's sort of those were sort of words that were coming up from initially, and Ellie was thinking of the same way.
Right on. Well, we have a comment from Ronis Varlam, so thank you for joining us. It says, so he says, found it, looks good. So thank you.
Hi, Ronis.
So yeah, please make if you have any questions for Mark, please shoot us that.
Yeah,
anybody
Ellie's
from the
going to come along later, so I'm not going to say anything. I mean, I know a little. We can talk about Darren's a little bit if you like.
Sure, yeah, go right ahead. If you want to move to that.
You know, he's one of the.
Again, this is casual. We're not nothing formal here.
Yeah, unless anyone. You know.
Does a group have a question for Mark? Anybody think anything come up?
Well, we have some live visitors, by the way.
Yeah, of course.
They come all the way from Poland.
Which is, thank you. That's so amazing.
From UK.
It's so wild. It's so wild.
London.
So thank you for joining us in New Jersey.
Yeah. That was Darren O'Brien, so he's got the, you know, if you're there, Darren, you know, there you go. It's still hanging. It's still there. It's all good.
Still there.
Made it.
Made it all the way.
You know, so... yeah. Okay, Darren. Right, so he's been spending a lot of time hanging around the cemetery in Norwood, because, you know, that's what some people like to do. And
Norwood is a suburb of South London.
South London. And they're you know, obviously they're interesting places, and if you think about it, as well as being surrounded by souls, you're surrounded by words and information. And I know Darren was saying it took a little while. Thinking of what he was going to share, and then sat in the cemetery, it suddenly occurred to him that these words might be quite meaningful. You know, because it's about location, it's about people, it's about life, it's about beginnings and endings, you know, if you're there, Darren, you know, please elbow me out of the way and say what you want to say. But yeah, taking that as the starting point. I mean, I know that was, you know, it's something that was a part of. It's what you know. It's not. It wasn't a new idea to spend time in the cemetery. Mm-hmm. You know, you've been hanging out in cemeteries for a few years now, but you know, to use that, I suppose it eventually filtered into your work, into your choice of exchange. Mm-hmm. And
yeah, with Dave,
it comes across with.
So here we go. Here's the diptych piece. So I talked to Dave a little bit about this, and I really love what they came up with in as far as the going to a cemetery and just using found words in the cemetery to create their work. So this is these words. I love how Dave is very literal with this. You know, he took the words and put them back on a headstone, which is wonderful. So these are all. I think they're all names. I think they're all names of. Well, I think if I'm wrong, but Dave said that they were well-known UK people.
Oh,
you know,
I see.
That he sent them. Does that ring a bell at all? They look.
I heard something about this. Yeah. I know Darren did mention something about. I don't know if all of them were, but some of them were.
Yeah, some of these
sound
familiar.
In New Jersey, obviously. Yeah. I don't know if they're the ones just that Darren gave him, or whether some of them are the ones that he found in New Jersey. Mm-hmm. I've got a feeling they might be.
Yeah, this was a. I think this was what the list that Darren sent to Dave. You know, because he was saying it's like Darren sent me a list of names. Like, what do I do with the names? Like, it's you know what I mean? Like, I think it was a wonderful kind of problem to have. Right. Yeah. It wasn't. How do you interpret a name? You know, how do you? You know, it's such a fascinating idea. So it was a good challenge, I think, for the Darren.
Anyway, because I know a couple of people might be in to see what I'm going to say. Should we do that?
Oh, of course, yeah.
So we get fed up and go, probably. No respect, nobody else. It's just that's that. So that's my piece, which is called "Within and Across Boundaries," and that is James Post's piece, who I'm partnered with, next to it here. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's written somewhere.
It's right there. Yeah.
Oh, is it? Oh, there you go.
Oh no. Oh no, it's on the list.
No, the words.
It's on the printout. Yeah.
There's the words on there. Now, what I did when we drew the names out in March 2020, I was a bit thrown because I heard this guy was a tattoo artist. I thought, oh wow, how do I realise that he made art as well? And I contacted him soon after. And what I did, in fact, and I made a decision on this pretty early on, I kept a sketchbook, Exhibit A, this, and I pretty much, it helped form what I was going to do, and it also jumps off on a few other points. And in fact, I've carried the book on to the end, even after the piece was made, and some of the fragments of the ideas have gone, and I'll share a bit of that as we go. So starting from that, I actually sent down, I wrote a list of names down, of which I used some of, and I sent him a list of names in an artwork as such. It's more about what he sent me, so I won't go into more, but that's what I actually sent to James as a piece for him to work with. Nice. And about a week, and I started already just playing around with some images, and then he sent me this as a statement, which is also on the wall, but that is the actual book version, which is, I never thought I would achieve much in a year during a global pandemic, lockdown, isolated and afraid. So his very much was a piece in the moment of that time.
It's very direct.
I mean, by then we were in 2021, but it's obviously reflective. And I thought, well, that's interesting. Oh, that's quite heavy. Somebody who might have been having a bit on the edge of things. And so I kept getting the image of a kind of a cocoon of somebody trying to protect themselves, to get away, you know, to not get attacked and to try and make sure they survive something, perhaps mentally or whatever. That's what struck with me. And straight away, with some of these pieces in the book, I started thinking of little kind of central protective areas and arrows. Now, this is really work I was kind of doing in a different context, very politically. If anyone's seen my work in the last few years, I'm dealing a lot with kind of conflicts and, you know, positive forces being attacked by dark forces being in Brexit, in America with Trump and everything, like liberal values. And that's been a central core of a lot of what I've done in the last couple of years. So already I had this structure of something in the middle and something trying to attack it from outside, and that stayed with it. And I mean, I won't go through all the pages of the sketchbook. There was the image of an hourglass, because one of the big things that we had was over the pandemic was time. You know, time that we were sitting out in our home. Some of us, I know Mark as a school teacher was able to teach online the whole way through it, but some of us didn't. We were getting paid and so on. But it was the boredom at times as well of when is this thing going to end and what are we going to do? So, and as it happened, in the year 2020, I did make a couple of digital prints about the home, which some of these, like this element, which is a plan of the house we bought in 2019. And I sort of wanted to use that. So the central part of it was very much, it's an idea I've had for years that I've never used. And it's about, it was very much about boundaries and borders and how we sort of had to live within certain borders. And so in many ways it was the bed. That's like, well, I suppose if you're married and you share it with somebody, you share that space. But often, apart from inside, the first line of a border, somewhere where you go to. And then it became the house. The front and the back, you know, the amount of times I looked out the front and back window thinking, you know, in the week that we could go out, we were restricted in Britain, particularly there were certain restrictions they were saying, how often you should go out a day and exercise and things like that. So, and then that's the town of Shoreham-by-Sea that I live in on the south coast, and that's in there. So it was these layers of boundaries that went beyond us, that very much more with what, and that was in a way of what James was saying. I felt locked down and afraid. I was getting that kind of vibe from that. So that worked across. And in a way, I suppose some of my favourite artists, people like Jasper Johns, I like the way they've always recycled these same images in the work. So in a way, a piece that comes up on the video screen that we got, that I Can't Breathe, We All Breathe piece, and so on. I used all the flags in the world. So on the micro, they were my boundaries, very localised in most cases. And then I've got like, 'cause at the same time, 2020 was also the whole George Floyd thing and the Black Lives Matter and all that kind of conflict that came out of that. And I made the other piece in direct response to that with all the flags of the world. So, and I'd already done all the arduous work actually putting that together. I had them already, and I've then reused them in a kind of miniature way and placed them all over the piece like this. So you've got the macro and the micro with it. And then, like, the idea of, on a wider level, humanity. Because at the same time, we were divided, we had things, but people came together a lot in that time for a lot of things. And so, you know, another series of pieces I made about, you know, humanity and the anti-vaxxers and all that. I like to use all the kind of human skin tones.
So yours really is 2020, isn't it? I mean, yours is more so fixed.
More so fixed in that period of time. Using things that I was using, but looking at the thing of humanity, you know, good versus bad, and those kind of things.
So do you think that? But is that? Do you think when you look back, because you're talking about some of the good things, but also, you know, the George Floyd and
I mean the other piece had that particularly, but these things are those like the arrows. I mean, the arrow is something I took a while before, because when the whole Brexit thing was going on, that became the government's graphic, get Brexit done, and there was an arrow, and I hated that, and I did use it a lot in pieces, you know, previous, so I still see that. And also, I haven't used them in this piece, but some of you have probably seen.
So you're holding up a mirror?
These coronavirus kind of virus things, but I used the Brexit arrow as part of that.
No, it's just like, do you think you're like showing the year, or do you have a take? Do you think
it's the year.
Have a moral view?
It went beyond the year.
Was it a good year?
Well, no, it was a mixture. I mean, it was a bad year in the wider thing of life. This is where the macro came. A good year that I think humanity in a lot of ways came together. I mean, you saw that, you know, with a lot of the, you know, and I think the voice of young people started to come up. Personally, I didn't have a bad time. I was a bit bored, and I was so on, and I didn't actually get it until much later after we were vaccinated. Didn't get paid until not long ago. But I sort of, you know, I was saying this to my friend on the way over here earlier, that, you know, I had a studio at home, and actually, in some ways, it just felt like being back at art school when you got paid some money, you know, sort of thing, and you could make work. And I think artists and creatives, to a certain extent, managed okay, because certainly artists, that's what they do, they just go off and make work. So the idea of being a little bit isolated sometimes doesn't really bother you. It's just you get a bit bored and you want to go and do something else. Like you can't go down the pub with your friends, for example, when we had all the restrictions.
I was really curious. I mean, you know, with the whole exhibition, the thing that you know when you have spoken to a lot of different artists, not necessarily knowing what they're doing, but I started to wonder if this was going to be a pessimistic show. I was, you know, with we're living in really challenging times, but I don't really get that. Now we're here, and that's the thing.
Yeah, you're right.
I mean, a couple of things I'd just like to talk about. I mean, you know, James, if he was here, could talk about his piece, and there's references in that I don't know without talking to it. But certainly, I mean, I sent him a list of words. I'm not going to read them out, but there were generally a list of words with things. Some had conflict, some had about boredom and things like that. But he actually, we had one Zoom conversation where we just sort of sounded each other out, and independently. But then at the start of 2022, I got a package from him, and he sent me a couple of, I can't think what you might call them, cartoons. They're the thing that tattooists do their work on.
Oh, the Flash.
A Flash, yeah. And he sent me a couple of those with them. There's drawings on his piece here, this one. And he asked me to put something in and send them back to him. There was two. He said he'd then send me back stuff again. And I said, well, I'm already quite a way through my piece, so that probably won't go into that. But they're on to this thing. There were things, and this is the court jester, and this is our Prime Minister, Boris Johnson. And I've actually got him on the side in a sense like that, because that really caused a lot of the anger and the aggravation and bad things. I'm not going to go into half of those. But I just, this totally trivial man who's conned his way into the office that he's in, and so on. You know,
right.
And America had their own version, an even more dangerous one, which unfortunately, at least for the time being, got rid of. But you know,
for now.
For now, yeah. So that's, you know, but I mean, it's something that does, blight a lot of things. I thought there's a lot of optimism in that piece. I want to keep a bit of the pessimism. But his idea of this joke figure as a sort of this. Basically, this, although in a way, court jesters can be quite fun. This guy certainly isn't. But
well, just so you know, Pete, Darren just popped on.
Yeah.
So as Julia Reese. So hi, Darren. He says, "Sorry, couldn't be there. Talk is good. Work looks fascinating." And and so his name's Julia Reese, but this is not. This is Darren O'Brien, not Julia Reese. Okay. So I guess Julia is somewhat.
Julia was somebody who used to be. Well, quite high up at ASC.
Oh yeah, that's because I see the logo. Okay, right on. So hi Darren. Thanks for joining us.
There we go. So so that's the piece there, and then I mean, I just wanted to make these sort of layers, and I started playing with the idea of borders, which is a project I'm quite fascinating. How a line in the ground determines what we're seeing it now with Poland and Ukraine. People who are escaping Ukraine to Poland. That line in the ground for be the historical arbitrary. Because I know a lot of the American borders, the states, they just drew a straight line and that's it. Nice. Whereas some are political, and that's a subject that's always fascinated me. There is, I think, at some point, maybe at the end of the year, there is something I'd like to try and develop with. Around the theme of borders, that's it's always been a fascination for me. So that's.
Well, we had that show a long time ago, didn't we?
Yeah, but we didn't. Borderline. Although there were, I mean, just because we had English to Scottish artists, I don't know if anybody. Stevie did because he did that.
Mine was national.
Yeah. Anyway, we'll have to show you that
for sure. Well,
those paintings were shapes of countries,
And if you come around to this side of James's piece.
Yeah, we'll go this side now.
This is James's piece. I mean, this was a page out of the sketchbook, this bit here, that I sent, I adapted it. Again, this is the thing I was talking about. It's a piece I've almost finished it, but I had this stencil cut, which is like a coronavirus virus symbol with the Brexit arrows on. I had 3 of them. And I've actually done these as spin paints. And this is the idea of the roulette table, because in very much the ways our government kind of doesn't make a decision. It sort of bets the house on both red and black, and then claims either one, sort of thing. And so I sort of started playing with that idea of a roulette with the. And I always wanted to use my spin painting machine for years, and hadn't had a reason to. But I finally did, which was good. So it was quite cool. I sent those back, and then he's used them in there, which is quite nice. So I've actually got some work into James's piece. But that's generally the piece. If anyone's got any questions on that before we move on to something else.
Sure. Well, I just have you brought up Jasper Johns, and I felt like that there was a deep connection to Johns in this work because of just the Target feel with the maps. And
over the years, there's been a very big connection.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask, like, was it intentional that the shape was of like the coronavirus? Is that because you have although it's a it's a circle.
Not
There,
the
I mean,
overall
there's like
piece.
there are like the things at the end. It looks like they could be spikes, you know.
Yeah.
So is that
be.
intentional?
Not for the coronavirus thing itself. I think the arrows have had the reasons and the things that I've done. I quite like the idea of a circular piece. I mean, oddly enough, Mark, who's someone who's known for making circular pieces quite a lot in the time I've known him, for once actually hasn't, which is interesting. But so very subconsciously that form was in my head, and I'd made the I Can't Feel piece in 2020, which was a series of panels and there's a big circular section of that. So I guess that image symbolising the world, if you like, as a circle. That, I mean, certainly for that piece, that's what I thought, and that could apply over to this as a circle like that. I mean, but the other John's feature was actually the words onto the piece, which is something he did at one point. That actually, I'll be honest, that was a practicality, because when I put the canvas board on it, didn't quite fit within the size of the surround.
Right, a lot of that happens.
I was thinking, how can I get around this? And that was the problem that I solved with that. When also I put my name on the bottom down.
Form follows function.
Yeah, so that actually worked quite well with that. So so that's it's. I mean, it fits with a lot of work, but it is different from stuff that I've done, which I actually like, because it's got different characteristics down there. Now, at this moment in time, what's going to happen with this feed is that we will be adding bits onto it when other artists come in, which will be sort of later on. But we can talk to, obviously Frank's here.
Yeah, we'll take a quick break,
as well.
You know, a few minutes, and then we'll get to.
A quick minute,
I can
be
do
back
the
in
whole
a few
thing.
minutes.
Yeah.
And that's that.
All right. Well, thank you for watching, everybody, and we'll be on
back in about
momentarily.
5 minutes.
About a few minutes, yeah. All right, we are live again at M Galleries with Mark and Ellie in front of their work. How wonderful is this? Long time coming.
So. Everybody still up from the UK? Hello.
Yes. Oh, they'll see it eventually. So, Ellie, thank you for coming and doing this wonderful exhibition with us. I love your work. So, do you want to talk a little bit about it?
Do I want to talk about
it? That is a loaded question, right?
Of course I want to talk about it. Anything specific you would like me to talk about? The process? Or
can we talk about the subject matter and the light? I think those are two interesting components.
Okay.
They may not necessarily translate.
Yeah, the subject matter was really more inspired by conversations with Mark rather than by the words themselves. Though I had those words out on my work table for months and months, and was always looking at them and thinking about them and trying to figure out how they'd fit into a piece. But it was much more, it grew more from the process of getting to know him a little bit and hearing from him about his experience in 2020. And we had a few points in common. Clouds were one of them, an interest that we shared, along with all sorts of things like shoes and magic and portals and April birthdays?
Close.
Okay.
March.
Right. Aries.
Yeah.
The Aries.
So, basically it evolved as a cloud, and the cloud was inspired by Constable's clouds, because I started thinking about which artists spend a lot of time painting clouds, and he's one.
Yeah, for sure.
He was also English, so I thought maybe I'd start working on that.
What a great.
I went for the Royal Liechtenstein one, did you?
Right.
Right.
No.
Yes.
Yes. Subconsciously.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah.
Right.
The
And of
Ben-Day
course,
dot clouds.
Neither of us had any idea we were both working with clouds, so that was nice.
Yeah.
There's also light that comes through.
Right.
So, I mean, to me, this was intended as a sort of a healing piece. To
Do you know
heal
what I thought
from
when I first
2020.
walked in yesterday?
Yeah.
Straight away. I thought brain.
Oh, interesting.
Shape, and
Okay.
I like that.
That's the immediate thing that comes
Right,
to me,
right.
You know.
I could see that.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, you might not necessarily see it as a cloud. I only see it as a cloud, but
Yeah, I see.
because I know where it came from.
Yeah.
So,
Like, yeah, I can definitely see, and then like the light kind of works with that too. You know, enlightenment, brain.
Sure.
You know, so that's the play with that is really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, at first I wasn't really excited about thinking about 2020 at all. You know, I thought, do we really have to focus on 2020?
That was one of the things that when this idea was, we were forming it a bit before we came to you guys and the guys at our end. It was kind of like, I think that came up a little bit about, because we were just going into 2021 by that point, although stuff was still happening.
Right.
But I think it didn't just happen, you know, it wasn't just the pandemic, that was one thing.
Sure.
It was a big thing and it was going out of life, but it wasn't the only thing.
Right.
And I think, you know, there are other cases, I think, I don't know even stuff, but other things came through, you know, and it could have been a positive experience. I think, you know, as you said earlier, the weird thing is about this is that we've got a lot of positive work in it that feels positive as well, you know, which is interesting. So that's kind of, you know.
I was talking about the key words earlier when I was chatting away, and reparations was one of them. And because I circled and highlighted and decorated some of the words that he sent me. That was more of the sort of key words, and it was interesting. You know, we talked about this last night as well in your home about how healing is such and magic, but you know the other key word. But healing is a part of process, and it's something that both words somehow have in common.
Right. Yeah, I mean, a lot happened in 2020 beyond the pandemic.
Right, for sure.
But some things had nothing to do with the pandemic.
Right.
Yeah, a little to do, right.
It just kind of.
I mean, Michael's, I think, had a big thing where he says that his work really changed in 2020. On that bit of text that you wrote, a rather large bit of text.
Yours certainly did.
I had a huge, that was, I can say that 2020 was like huge for a huge shift in my work. I had a solo show at M. In what year were you in now?
It was like right in the beginning of it, right, or close to it.
Your solo show at M, of course.
Okay, so the
Close.
yes, I had one in 2020, but then I also had one in 2021, and I'd say that the larger shift was the 2021 show, because it was like I'd had time to process a little bit what 2020 was.
And of course, the 2020 show is the bridge that gets us here, because it's me watching the Facebook feed of that, having chatted to Mark, that led to us approaching Frank, and
which is right, exactly.
You know, those sort of things.
Exactly.
So
that was the beginning.
In another
of it.
sense, it's an important show from that point of view as well.
That's kind of wild, right? Thinking back then.
Yeah.
Well, was there anything else you want to bring up, Ellie, or we before we move on to the next?
I mean,
next
the
piece?
only thing I wanted to mention was that yes, when you first approached me about it, and I was of course flattered and honored, and then wondering about, did I really want to think about 2020? The process itself somehow became an experience of optimism. You know, doing something new, connecting with someone new, and working on a project jointly that was going to exist in the future. Just was a really great experience.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah.
Well, and actually, it's funny that you at your talk, which I think was the impetus for the show.
August 2020. Yeah.
Right. We talked about how I was fascinated with the idea that there wasn't a lot of, like, from the last pandemic, you know, the 1918 pandemic.
Right.
How I read this article about how not a lot of artwork or work was made about the pandemic because people wanted to forget it. They did not.
Well, don't forget, so come off the back of a world war in Europe
exactly.
as well. So
right.
there was that,
exactly,
so.
and they just want to move on. Right. And I thought there was an interesting problem and thing to tackle is something that you'd want to typically avoid. And how do you square that circle? You know, focusing on something you want to avoid. You know, was really interesting.
Back then it was probably way more scary.
Yeah.
Unless you live like in this
well, you didn't have the internet
reality where you say, oh, it's not that.
But you didn't have the medicine either. So
we knew immediately what it is.
Right, for sure.
And half a year later, we had like not the cure, but something that was on the way.
Something akin to that.
Back then, they didn't even know what it was.
Right.
Right.
We also had like joint Zoom calls and video, like just to, like I mean, there was. People were eager to connect.
Yeah. Well, again, we started.
However they could. I mean, I think that's one of the most beautiful things that came out of.
Yeah.
I feel like that I have a new, deeper appreciation for my human relationships, you know, like and connections.
I think it also says a lot about the fact that a lot of people's experience of dealing with the pandemic is one that it actually was a break from what reality was.
Absolutely. I agree.
So we actually got a break.
There was a deceleration, which is good for your heart, and suddenly you see like,
absolutely.
It's running, you know? Suddenly you have time to sit back because you can't go outside, and you don't have to commute to work.
That wasn't the case for me. It was an acceleration.
It wasn't?
Oh,
okay.
Because the organization had to survive.
Right.
And completely in a new business model.
First line
and
online,
of course.
And then we had to keep reinventing it and reinventing it as things evolved.
Yeah.
So it was actually much more intense work-wise.
I heard from many of my friends that are teachers and things that they were working harder.
Yeah.
Even though, even my friends in LA who didn't have to drive 5 hours to get to work, were still working harder because they had to learn a whole new way of teaching.
Right.
Technology,
But the first lockdown, the March through to July lockdown, felt like a slowdown. However, the winter lockdown 6 months later, that was a nightmare. That was awful. Really, it was winter. The pressures, because technology got better and everybody got used to using it.
Right.
There was a greater expectation.
And then there was Zoom fatigue. That you just don't want to. I mean, we did classes on Zoom and it works, but especially with clay, you have to touch it.
Well, I only taught my evening classes, the one in the first term, because they'd already paid by the time it came around. And it was like, they were. But these were very beginning. They were adults, but they were very beginning. It was a level one, and you've got to kind of go and see them and talk to them. And say, and all you're watching is the top of 4 or 5 people's heads. Everything all right? Yeah. And then you start doing other stuff. You sort of, and then hold it up at the screen every now and again, and you get send it. You can do a bit like that, but it wasn't sort of thing. We worked for tutorials.
No, as tutoring with students was, you see the students would log on, but then that would be about it.
And then play football. on the football.
Right, the camera's off. No idea what they're doing.
Right.
I actually rang the home of one student who was not giving me any feedback, and I thought, I'm going to check.
Is he even there?
He rang, and the parent answered the phone, walked into the bedroom and recorded.
Whoa.
There's other stuff going on.
Right.
But, that's...
I mean, if you're an accountant, it probably doesn't make that much of a difference.
Right.
But like my wife, she's teaching theater. What do you do with theater?
Yeah.
Well, some people did do some plays.
Yeah, they did.
What my student was doing is exactly what Boris was doing. It's what our government was doing. They were doing one thing on show.
Well,
Boris doesn't.
That's
his main job.
Behind the scenes.
He does nothing, that's his whole point. He loves the idea of being Prime Minister. He wants to have a legacy of being Prime Minister. Right. Just the actual job that he's not interested in. That's the in a nutshell.
Right. Well, makes sense, right?
He has something common with Donald. Donald is only interested in what helps him. He's not really interested in saving Europe, making people's lives better.
No.
Yeah.
Not likely.
But anyways.
Well,
I never forget they had. Who was the guy who came in before? There was an before Boris won.
David Cameron.
Theresa May was the Prime Minister.
Yes, and before that was David Cameron, right? And I think there was like this.
Well, he's the one that called the referendum.
Right.
I'm
And
just
then he sees like, oh, this is all going to fall into pieces.
Oh, he packed it in the following morning. He was gone.
Right.
He resigned on the doorstep at number 7 the following.
And apparently
7 o'clock. He didn't want to know. He was gone. He left the mess for the rest of us.
Yeah,
that was it.
And he was singing.
He went to write his memoirs in his shed.
He was listening to Monty Python.
It was
on the right side of life. And that was caught on tape. So he must have been so happy.
Yeah. Oh wow, I didn't hear that.
Yes, it was on music.
Right.
Yeah, NPR.
Right, are we doing it?
Well, yeah, let's, Marianne just
Facebook
popped on and said, hi, Ellie, Nicole, and Simon. So, Ellie,
Hello. Hi,
for Nicole and Simon.
Everyone
Marianne
was
Riker's on. So, we're gonna move on. Did you want to go next, Nicole?
Whoever's there, hello.
All right.
Oh, your
So,
earrings remind me of, what is her name in the window?
Oh, yeah.
Sandra, yeah.
Sandra. I love her.
Let's go see.
I love her work. I've been looking at her work. Yeah, she had some shoes that were really.
Oh, yes.
I put those couple on the end of the thing, didn't I?
Right.
On the end of the video.
That's the thing. Mine is actually right now it's the unfinished one.
Right.
Yes, but I also saw
went on
Yeah,
you went on the
Yes.
Thank you. But there is something that needs to be added, and that'll be tomorrow.
Yes.
So maybe I can even do that in that showcase.
We could. I mean, I thought it was a safer spot for the work for now, but we can move it out to the middle of the room for the performance too.
It would be kind of funny to do it in the. I become a mannequin.
That would be interesting.
So,
So we're gonna look at Nicole's now. So let's go since we're.
And then.
it's like college prep.
All right.
And all of the rest is hand crochet.
Nicole.
All my pieces are all hand crochet. I learned
You're on camera.
January.
You're on camera. You're live. Come on, Nicole. You got this. All right. I love this piece. It's quite surprising. Like I really it's and in contrast. Like I know a little bit about your exchange with Magda, but please go right ahead into your thing.
So first of all, I'd like to say hello to Magda. I wish she was here, but I know that I feel pretty confident that I will meet her at some point. So Magda and I connected immediately, pretty much after the project was announced. When was that now?
About March.
Yeah, March.
2021.
Okay, so like a little more than a year ago.
Yeah, about a year. Yep.
We took a while to exchange our words, but we. Hello.
Oh, perfect timing! Perfect timing.
Oh, you're here. Thanks for coming.
Look at that! Wow.
I love technology.
Only problem is you're next.
What's that?
Only problem you're next on the film.
Oh, right. I just met your sister. Anyway, so we connected pretty quickly after. I think Magda messaged me and we started talking to each other, and there was definitely a little bit of a language barrier, but it wasn't really an issue. We tried to have a video call, and then we started communicating with videos and pictures, and it was really beautiful.
Yeah.
I felt like I got to know her sort of through. I don't know, there was just like through visuals and through like emotional reactions to things.
Right.
We had a connection immediately. It was really beautiful.
Yeah, because there was so much of it was like somewhat of a language barrier, right? You mentioned
there was, but it wasn't really an issue. We learned how to communicate.
Right.
We decided not to do the video calls and just communicate through imagery and messaging each other on Facebook with pictures of our studio or work. And she would send me little videos of her dancing or, so.
Magda, I know she thought it was a very positive communication, and she was sharing music with you as well. I think that connection sort of gave her a lot of confidence.
That's beautiful.
Which is really, she found space in her creativity to explore herself, explore space around her, explore her practice more.
I felt like an immediate kinship with her. Like I felt like I had known her before. It was like immediate. And it was interesting because we weren't really communicating verbally that much, but
Right.
there was like this spark or something. This is Mark's. Mark is Magda's brother,
Right.
brother-in-law.
Yeah,
so
that's
just
right,
so
yeah.
everyone knows.
Just to be clear.
So he's an expert on Mark.
Right, right.
I said a little about her work before, and I don't know, what do you think of the contrast?
Right,
I think
yes.
that there's a real connection, and I find that fascinating because we didn't talk about our work for the show. Of course, I was following Magda's work and her collage work, and she was following my work, but this is a real departure from any of the work that I posted. I mean, other than like I think I posted this dress that I made.
Right.
In the
That's it.
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, that's
perfect.
the dress.
Another good timing. That's
Before
great.
it was a dress. I think that it's really interesting to start a dialogue with someone, and that there are a lot of relationships between the pairings and the works, and I don't know how much direct communication there was about it.
Varying degrees. Some,
Yeah.
like your one, like obviously Ellie and Mark was a lot, but equally I had one conversation with James, and he sent me something, and we did a little collaboration, which is in his piece, and that was it, basically.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, it was a chance pairing, right? But
yeah,
how much-
as we went for the draw, we were going to, we thought the work involved in that, and then in the end we just had this idea, let's just draw them. It's
Yeah.
partly because in our sporting football competitions, we have draws and teams play each other
Right,
every
right,
year,
right.
and we thought, just to do that. But 1 to 11's one set, well, 1 to 10's one set, 11 to 20's the other set, and he picks one end up at this end, and we pick at the other end, and that's it.
Yeah.
You get who you get. You know, that's
Yeah,
it.
simple.
But
Yeah.
it wasn't. What I wanted to say was it's chance, but I don't know.
No,
There's
of
a lot
course,
of
other things are then
there's a
playing
lot
on top
of
of
mixed
it,
things about
Yeah.
like a mixed feelings about like
Right.
I really felt like we were paired. We were all paired with the person we were supposed to
Yeah,
be paired.
Right.
but like Ellie,
Yeah.
And Magda said to me early on, without revealing, she said to me that her work really reminded her of who she had, parts of herself.
Yeah.
And that was really beautiful to me. So we had. I also have my grandmother was Polish on my father's side.
Oh.
So I think, and I've always connected with the Italian part of myself, but there seemed to be a part that was like a little bit missing or something, and so I felt there was that part of it too. Like I felt like we were supposed to be paired together. So moving ahead to a couple of months later when it was a while before we exchanged words, and I felt like the words came out of our relationship forming. Like I felt like there was some trust that had started to form from stuff that we had shared with each other through, like I said, imagery and parts of our lives. That enabled the words to be sort of offered to each other as almost like a letter or something.
Yeah.
And so I thought about that. I thought, the relationship formed by the pairing of the two, I think in a certain extent, like helped to create the words. Like the words came out were as much from the individual artist, Magda or myself, as they were from the relationship that had formed.
Yeah.
So I liked actually, at first I felt like, well, we should exchange our words, and then I just let it happen when it was supposed to happen, and it did, and I think that was best.
I think I was more organic, rather than necessarily thinking, I've got to tie my words down to the year 2020. You're in it. We're already a product of that year. All of us have just become a product of it because it's impacted on us anyway. So whatever we do is a response. We know it's the starting point, but it's whatever we were making after that is whatever it is going to be a response to that year and all of the personal things that happened, or maybe not everybody's work was necessarily personal. Just listening to what's been said today.
me and mine was more
Yeah, exactly. Thinking of yours,
but not in a personal sense. It's more
it's not
snapshots around me.
Yeah.
As opposed, based on what James is saying.
You held a mirror up. You're reflecting. You're kind of mutually observing and referencing that in your work. I think whatever happened, you know, whatever the results were, when you're creative, when you respond, you know, you can't help. You kind of absorb
Absolutely
what's around you.
Yeah, it wasn't like, oh, I have to make this about my relationship with Magda. It just happened.
Yeah.
But it was also about what it was. You can't really separate. It was all sort of together, I think. So to me, it's interesting that we didn't actually talk about our specific work, yet there's a relationship going on here. I think compositionally, I'm pretty like, it's really kind of really beautiful to see, because we didn't talk about our work, but compositionally there's like a language that's similar, I think.
Can I throw something to Frank? Because
Yeah.
this has been going through my head. We were talking earlier, you know, so when you were hanging, it's really fascinating, because we talked about the idea of diptych. As curators, you know, it was, and I think you've hung the show really well.
Yeah,
It's basic, and there's an equality. You know, there's an equality in the hanging. I think playfully, some works I can imagine I want to see them buttressed together just to shake it up. And this is one pairing that I can imagine clashed together. Just to see what actually happens. I mean, I don't think that would work with yours. I don't think it works with many of the others, but. You know, and just personally, if it was just a two-person, you know,
what we could do,
it'd be really interesting.
What we could do,
and
you know,
same with Ellie's and mine. I think ours buttressed together. They'd be really fascinating to see. Is that going to create tension, or is it going to create harmony?
Before we get to the London show over the summer, I might try and give an idea, get one of those virtual space things and actually play with that a bit.
Well, these ideas I want to hear, because I'm doing another version of this in July at the Arbor. So, that's something that I want to think about. So feel free to show this up.
It doesn't have to be every piece necessarily.
That's right.
I don't know whether that would work or not.
But these two would be really
Frank,
fascinating.
I just would like to say, sorry to interrupt you, I'm sorry, that Frank always does an amazing job hanging a show. And I remember the first show I had, I just, after I had the first show, I just thought, oh no, I can't, there's nothing, I'm just leaving it.
This was the attraction.
He instinctively knows what to
do. Without blowing smoke up his backside, it's like kind of, basically when I came in on that thing, I mean, you told me a bit about what you were doing before and all of that. And I thought a little town in New Jersey, how good is it going to be, all of that. And when you saw, you were saying, you saw the questions you were asking and the stuff, and that's why I thought, and based on what we'd spoken about just before that, it was like, this is a really good thing. This is a good thing, it's not like a kind of gallery shop like a lot of little small town galleries would be.
Sure.
There's something else going on. I didn't know you had other spaces and all of that thing.
Right.
So that really was the thing. It was the quality of what was layering underneath that really caught a lot of traction.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Provided you space.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Thank
You
you.
don't find that.
Well,
You can't take that for granted.
I do have one question for Niclole.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So,
Standing right in
so the way. No, please get in there. You get with your work. So I wanted to ask about. So I feel like that both of these have a very corporeal or bodily thing happening.
Yes.
So this, your work feels like a cross section of a torso. Like I'm looking at organs almost.
Oh, I love that.
So
it
has this. So I was wondering about the like how the and you have your piece on, right? This your body piece. So I'm interested in that connection between the textiles and body, and I feel like Magda, is also it's about these partial objects, partial parts of the body being represented.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to get your, was that in something that was in the back of your mind, or something that kind of came from the process?
Well, that's interesting that you said something about that. You mentioned the physical clothing and the process. Like that actually I'm wearing this and that creating it was physical. Too. Right? Is that what you meant?
Exactly.
So that's interesting right there. But what I would like to say is that the pandemic, I was starting to talk about this earlier, was huge in shifting my work. Am I starting to answer your question?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So when I had the solo show here in 2020, it was sort of like a very dark kind of show. There was a lot of black in my work, and there was a heaviness. And then the show that I had the following year, in 2021, the pandemic was obviously still happening, as it still is now, but I had some time to process. And I remember I had a solo show coming up here, and it was just when things were starting to open up in the springtime that I had to create all this work for my August show. And I thought, oh my God, the last thing I want to do is be locked in my studio. I want to make work, but I don't want to be in my head. Like, I can't be in my head anymore. I've been in my head for, over a year now. Too much time inside there. And I didn't want to be in there. So I started, I had a show last year where I was doing a lot of hand stitching. I did a doll show at MPNA. And so that started that sort of physical process of like repetitive stitching, and then creating the image from that repetitive physicality, and it allowed me to sort of get out of my head and just let the image happen. If that makes sense.
Yes, it does. Yeah.
So, but I felt like that show was sort of like it was sort of like physical, but then also a little bit, there was like a mental thing going on too with that work. And then I feel like I went completely physical with this work. I really wanted to learn how to crochet because I wanted to use it in my work, as a sculptural element. And also, anyone that knows me knows that I'm really into the body as expression and using clothing to express myself. So the first thing I made was a dress. So I taught myself on YouTube, and I watched like 8 million videos, and I'm still watching them. And so I intended when we exchanged our work, it was really exciting to get the words from Magda. I just couldn't wait to see what the words would be. Yeah. That was really exciting for I think all the artists, right? And
so did they both go pretty much at the same time?
We sent them at the same time. Yeah. We
so you made a decision. We're going to send them.
Right, exactly. So that we didn't, which was good because it wasn't like, oh, I'm going to.
Was that a discussion you had before about we'll hold it back until we both agree? Or
yes, yeah, because I think that was important. Like I didn't want my words to affect her words at all, so we had to send them at the same time. That was what our agreement was. I also asked Magda to send them in Polish. Not that I understand any Polish, but I thought it would be really interesting to see them in her native language.
Right.
So
did you do the translation here? Was it a Google Translate thing?
She sent me them in English too.
Oh, right.
I just wanted to see what they looked like.
I was really curious, and the translation sometimes gives you.
But that's really interesting, and I still have the words, so I think I might do that. See. That's really interesting.
That would be awesome.
There might be something there. But Chinese whispers sort of thing happening.
You're right. I was a little concerned that because of the language barrier, that maybe the words wouldn't get translated. But I also just went I thought, well, it doesn't matter really. Emotionally, we're exchanging an energy, and it doesn't matter, right? Because it's not all about what her words mean to her, obviously. I'm not her. So it's so interesting, how this shifts too. If I had these words now, I might make a different piece.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Than when I started a couple months ago. So
it's funny. This morning I was with Ellie, and she was talking about something that you were involved in, where it was kind of based on a cookery program that I don't know about, which is where you get given ingredients and you have to make something. Only this was a case of giving the ingredients for artwork, and then
yes, right. Yep, the CCA. Yep. Yeah. The art throwdown. Yeah, we were given 3 things that were 3 mystery items
that sounds really awesome,
to use. and then in any way, and yeah, like right, exactly. There was this wonderful tension leading up to that, because I didn't know what the volume was. I didn't know how big they were, how small they were, or what, you know. So it was, yeah, that was a lot of fun. That was a lot of fun.
I imagine
that sounds really fun.
Did that feel? Could you draw any similarities with you getting your 20 words? You know, the revealing of it to being given the ingredients to make it.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Oh yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, it was kind of like that too. That, and you know, I wanted to have this the unboxing be that too. Like, I guess it's all about discovery, you know, and I like that sense of discovery and being thrown into something.
Yeah.
You know, and kind of like finding your way out. You know, is a really kind of exciting thing to do in art. Maybe not in anything else, but in art for sure. You know.
Out of little stresses and traumas normally comes from, you know, comes something quite interesting.
Yeah, that's absolutely.
It makes something new, breaking eggs.
Yeah.
It's doing something new, isn't it? And
yeah, I think
to get shaken out of your normal.
Absolutely.
routine.
It was like a problem. I mean, in a sense, it was a problem-solving experiment. You know, like you're making.
Right.
Normally, you get in your studio and you make whatever you want, right? Or you do a commission piece, or. But it's not. You know, it's not a normal assignment, right?
No.
Yeah.
So, but I felt like within. I liked that there. You know, obviously there had to be some rules about dimensions and everything, and sometimes I feel like you can almost be more creative. Like a little bit of structure can be like really liberating.
Oh yeah, that there's like that
really liberating. Then like
right,
it's
paradox.
a free for all. Like that doesn't really.
The size was good. No, you know, when we decided what we're going to do it. Oh, 2020, obviously.
Yeah, I know. I feel like I need to tuck some of my strings.
No,
Get a little longer.
Well, Charlotte's slightly over. I mean, the reason
I told Frank, I'm like, Frank, just tuck them back into the
I love him like that.
My piece was because I'm slightly over, and that's a sort of space.
Listen, that makes the piece. I love that what's been dangling.
So I love that you see organs, Frank, because
absolutely.
Obviously.
Like I'm looking at a medical diagram, you know, but in crochet.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it's wild.
So I see this piece kind of. Should I talk about the piece and the words?
Sure, of course.
Okay,
that's the idea.
Right. So originally, the black sequin piece is so everything is handmade by me. All the crochet work is all done by me and attached. But a couple of the pieces were found objects. This is a piece of trim from the fabric district in Los Angeles. This woven piece of fabric behind was given to me by a friend when I was visiting Brazil in about 2006. So I've had it since then, and I was, it was perfect to work with because I could weave into it. And I wanted it to be, I didn't want it to be a hard background. I wanted it to be sort of drapey and organic, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. I think if I had put it on a canvas, it wouldn't, that's interesting about the organs. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But I saw it as, so this was the last piece. So this was sort of it had like this sort of dark red crochet, but it didn't have that black piece. And that was the last thing that happened on that piece, and I think it tied the whole thing together. Mm-hmm. And it also connected me to the words more with the piece because there's a part here that, it definitely wasn't literal with the words, but at the same time, it was part of the piece, right? It was inspiring the piece. So it says something about, apparently in death, you fly in control. And this to me was almost like it was almost like a sort of angel figure, wings, and there's sort of a real vibrancy to the piece and a life, I think, with these sort of the roses that were also found in a vintage box of treasures I had, and then the crocheted sort of drooping flowers that are sort of like alive but like decaying at the same time for me. Mm-hmm. So there's sort of that mix of like life and death and
Interesting.
And as a memorial also for COVID in a way too.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
No, that's the first thing that came to. So you say it's a torso that was.
It feels like a torso. Yeah.
I love that.
And the shape, yeah, kind of. The first thing I came to my mind is they have something of a shaman.
I love that too.
Shamans, of tribal shamans, and they have like these specific costumes or whatever that's called, and when they do their thing. And it reminds me of pictures I've seen from shamans in Siberia, and they kind of course, they talk to the ones that have already left, and they talk to the ones that will come, and they talk to the animal souls and things. So that's kind of maybe relates to what you just said about life, death, and that the angel, that image.
Right, absolutely.
In Christianity, probably the shaman then was replaced by the angel or whatever. I'm not that's kind of just like how it feels.
Yeah, I thought of it as it also is a memorial piece in a way for for everything that everyone went through. Yeah. And I grew up Catholic, which I'm not. I don't relate with that religion now as an adult, but all of that imagery is in my subconscious and comes up in my work all the time. Yeah. Also, at Christmas time for New Year's, I was up in the Hudson Valley with an old friend of mine whose husband is Peruvian. Okay. And we did a Peruvian offering, and released it into the river with like flowers, and I'd never experienced that before. So I think, and all those vibrant colors, I don't know if you're familiar with all those visuals, but I think that I was channeling that a bit too, because so I took a lot of pictures.
Yeah, it all makes sense.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up, Simon.
That's kind of what I thought of, like, and there, of course, many cultures have that, and different, some places they almost, depending on what the climate is, also they almost make it then, or they change their skin color into something like this by using colored clay, and or adding stuff. But that kind of is
adornment, isn't it? It's like how you adorn yourself. Yes. And that can be to either sometimes adornment can be to make yourself to be recognised as part of a group, or it can be,
and it sets you apart also. Not necessarily a shaman is always a deeply spiritual person. Can also be a person who just wants to run the show.
The same way that the tattoo is something that it could be tribal, it could be to relate to your community or to your group, or it can be completely individualistic. Right. There's two different ways of seeing. Of looking at that.
And you can see that if you take that, let's say, from the shaman or something of a more earth-connected culture, and then you go the next thing would come to mind for me is the armor of a Japanese samurai. And they had exactly that by bringing themselves out. They had these masks. They had all these animalistic symbols, or demons, etc. A lot of color, gold. Very, very intricate in the way, something you don't go into the battle with that, of course not. That was what to represent, but what they also could do is, when the two armies met, there would be, out of each side, would one of the high-ranking, or even the highest-ranking one, he would come out and tell a story, just completely go off and completely tell everybody how the dragons he killed, what cool of a guy he is, etc. And then the other side did the same thing. And sometimes, only sometimes, that spared hundreds of lives. Because what ended up then is they had to basically do a duel. And one of them had to die. Even if he didn't, it would have been not honorable if he didn't die. But by doing that, they often changed the course of that day.
There's another thing. Sorry, one more. There's so much in that piece of work. If you saw it on the railing outside, then you would associate with something that happened there.
If you saw it on the railing?
On the railing. So fencing, and you have it at the roadside, and suddenly you know that's a really important place because something happened there. And so I don't know whether we have that same tradition in the States. In Britain, you know, some tragic, something has happened, then people will adorn that.
Oh, right, to mark it. It's like someone died there, a little bit of ribbon, or
accident. And
yes,
and people
I love that.
Or tie flowers or emblems of.
Yeah, sort of like the memorial of 9/11 too, down at the Trade Center. Yeah, and also, you know, I wanted to actually, that made me think of something that Frank said about the organs, because the color was very important to me. I envisioned a lot of red in the piece from the beginning, because I was thinking about the body and decay and blood and death, but also beauty and like organic, like flowers sort of growing through the earth. But also, I mean, that actually started in like if you remember, Frank, in my 2020 show, I had a lot of like sort of bodily colors in the show. Like there was a lot of red, and there was black too, but there was like yellow and like the colors of the body, like flesh tones and.
So Frank, you say then. Is it the color or the shape or both?
Well, it feels like this, like an abstracted torso to me. You know, that these are like, you know, we have. I mean, I feel like that the flowers feel like they're intestine. You know, and you know, just there's just like these are.
Where's the gallbladder?
I believe it's right.
It should be green.
So yes, that had a very, and that's how I. And Magda's piece, like with being pieces of a body, so they're both pieces of bodies to me, you know, and that's how they got the connection, or I feel like there's a connection. Exactly, external, internal, right.
Well, so Magda and I, or from early on, we noticed a kinship between our, she had a lot of sort of figurative elements in her collages, and body parts and fashion imagery, like sort of like the way the body moves in clothing, and she's a tango dancer also, so it makes sense. Sure. The physicality in this and the way the body, and even it says she has the word dance in the words that she gave me. So there's like a real elegant movement going on in her piece, but I feel like I remember one of the videos that she sent me when we were communicating through imagery was like just her studio, like, and she was just ruffling through images that were on her table. Right. As she did similar in her video talk, I think, too. For the, so, I don't know, it's just interesting how, like, those early conversations before, like I said, somehow became part of the sort of larger experience of sharing words and making work from them. Right. But I love the way the mirror creates the piece. Yeah. Like, I didn't quite understand the whole mirror thing until I saw it at the gallery, and now I'm like, the piece changes all the time, right? Depending on who's standing in front of it.
Yeah, it's the opposite of her other work, just because of the mirror. You know, her other work is framed. The boundaries are really, really important. So the space is
here's the boundaries, the mirror, and
here,
it's not contained.
Here it's not contained. But suddenly all of this space is thrust into the piece of work.
I love that.
Around it.
So it's an open boundary.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the previous exhibition she had was called Breathing Space. Oh, okay. And this seems quite a relevant step from Breathing Space.
Was that the one she had at Sala?
Yeah.
Okay, so that was like, I don't know, like shortly after I met her, I think, or August. Yeah. It was right around the time I had my show here. That's right, I remember that.
And that's having that. I mean, it was obviously a very, very recent idea, but it's a good step forward, I think, and especially with looking at freedom's really important to a sense of space. I think someone referred to her, a Polish writer was in referencing her work, said that she was like a space, like an astronaut. She craved space, and it was quite interesting. It doesn't translate exactly, and I'm not the expert here, but it's like an astronaut, basically, a space.
Well, this piece particularly, I think it reads like that. You know, there's something about the, you know, because of the use of the mirror, you know, has this, you know, another dimension is added inside, so there's more space, like literal more space.
There's something kaleidoscope-like about it too. Like I feel like it's turning while you're looking at it, almost like the way the body parts are formed in the composition. Like I feel like you can almost like walk up to it and go like this or something, you know, like you could rearrange the parts. I think because of the mirror and because it's so. Yeah. Does anyone? Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course.
It is.
And the form itself lends to that, like it's turning.
When the colors in, like look, when you go, it becomes very colorful. When I go, it's just black.
Oh, right. But this is like a gear here too. Like I also feel like that's a similarity between our work. I feel like there's
gear.
organic and I feel like one thing that's important to me in my own work is a sense of balance, like emotionally. I also color, like compositionally and color, but emotionally, a balance has always been really important to me. And I feel like that's in Magda's work too.
I hope she doesn't mind. But I draw your attention to one thing.
I don't want to correct me if I'm wrong about something. I'm just my perception.
Let's give it that emotional center in there's a kiss in the middle. Which just centers the work, just grounds it, just a small kiss.
Your sister mentioned that.
Yeah. Which is it's quite an element. It's an important element of the work.
Wow. Well,
right, and the sensuality of the sort of naked splash too, and the rotating. It's very
Very nice. Well, thank you, Niclole. Yeah, I love all the insight. So,
also, I'd just like to say one thing. It was really hard to make a small piece for the show because I wanted this to fill the whole gallery. But anyway, I knew I couldn't.
I love it. I love it.
Like I'm excited for my next show. My next show with you, I'll make like a giant crocheted sculpture.
Did you ask Frank, can I have a whole wall?
Well, tell you what, Niclole.
It's 20 feet, right?
2020 show.
Yeah, it's 20 feet. Right?
Yeah, I heard 20 feet.
Obviously, this will be the piece for London, but the way that the gallery's set up, that's in a contained space. You've got the whole courtroom, so if you want to, croquet half the courtroom, you can.
Yeah, I've heard of croquet. Yeah, we can play croquet and then.
Think about the link between your croquet and like, people going to trial, and you can have a good piece there.
Right on.
You know, with the restriction with the size that informed everything.
It helps.
It does help.
It helps so
but
much.
Out of the 20
I was
works
making
that
a
are here, there are only 4.
Yeah.
But out of we've got 20 works in here. Only 4 of them actually have a frame. There's nothing else nothing else has an actual frame.
That's very interesting.
Yeah, true.
Only 4 works that have been given that formal edge to them.
That's right.
Everything else seems to
loose.
That's a very good point. That's a very good point.
Are you including James's piece as well as that?
Yeah. We have 1, 2. We have this piece over there. And,
that's a very good point.
And Darren's as well is framed.
Well, that's what's interesting about it too. That we were told up to 2020, right?
Right.
So it's not like it has to be 2020.
No, and it
which still gives us freedom, but like which is
Well, it depends on how you define 2020. Also, like you said, it's all part of the collective experience. It's all part of the collective consciousness, and that lives on. So how do you, I mean, it's got as a numeric thing or as a time thing, it's gone, but it's still there.
It's still It's still very much there.
Yeah. And like you say, your work changed, and that has influenced you then and will influence you now. So it's still there.
Yeah,
it's like those experiences you have when you're a kid and you're still a student. So I was a student, and I remember I was at school in a place called Winchester in the south of England, and we have the year 1 school trip, it's a study trip to Berlin, and then you have your experience in Berlin or whatever your trip is, and then the expectation is how are you going to respond to that trip? How can you respond to it's that you can either do it because it's your homework, and you make stick some bits of postcard in there, and set a bit of collage from a newspaper with some German writing, or you don't, and then maybe a few years later you find that what you're doing is a reference to that experience. You can't put experience, you can't pin.
No, it's like a circle rotating.
You don't realise.
That's a beautiful.
It's this thing. It filters. Things get pushed away. Other things you retain.
Or you look back and you look. It feels differently, but or there's something that is still right there. Like you say, like in the early years. I mean, I have the reason why Frank and me, we do this collaboration. It's a clay dance. And at one point, then still clay, but sand took over. And I thought, what am I doing here? And that's me as a kid playing in a large sand pit where they would mine sand for quartz, basically.
Right.
And we used to do, we used to play Indians and do these sand paintings. And there you go. Yeah.
Well,
changed.
Well,
and it's still the same fun.
Wait one second. All right. Hey, okay, so we are live again with Marq Kearey and Magda.
In Poland.
In Poland.
Yeah.
I love it.
This is actually Salah 752. You can see.
Yeah,
here.
we're January. Yeah, January 2023. It's going to move there, right? So, hi Magda. Did you hear me?
Should we put Magda next to her work?
Why not?
Am I on the way or is it all right?
No, you're fine.
No, it's all good. Okay, so this work, Magda. Magda was paired with Niclole.
Yes.
Okay, and it's a really interesting pairing, really good pairing. I think they connected pretty well. Yeah, you'd say that it was pretty positive connection.
Right, that's what I was hearing. Hi, Tristan LaFerrier is on. So hi, Tristan. This is welcome, artists.
Hey, hello.
Hey, Tristan. Thank
Hello.
you.
Yeah, so Magda took her 20 words. Related to vision and the future and interior and trauma. I mean, you can see with her work, she deals with space a lot.
Right.
The big thing is like space and connecting that with pauses, like breaks in time and having this kind of space to move. And so she always deals with collage. Images that she's like tearing up and creating new spaces for them, and kind of like making new dimensions. Normally her work's on glass frames, and the border is really, really important for her. So this is quite different because she really, really wanted to put it onto a mirror so that whoever is in the space would enter the artwork, if you know what I mean.
Right.
You know, it's kind of, and it also brings all that external space into the piece of work. So it's kind of creating even more space. So she had a show last year, and that whole show was she sort of lined the walls of the gallery space. With these really fragile works, these figures that were torn apart and limbs scattered all over the place. I think, just 2020 was that sort of year she thought, there's this, I could engage with it, looking at it and think about social distancing and all those sorts of ramifications that you can make a direct connection with. But they're pretty personal works, really. They're very, very personal, I think what I think is brave about what Magda did. She sort of put very, very intimate, really personal work on show, and then she sort of, by putting the work onto mirror, she's sort of inviting people in there, which is. It's pretty rare,
right.
And I think maybe that was something that happened in this relationship. I know Nicole's not here; she's on her way over, isn't she?
She is. Yeah, she'll be here shortly. But I remember what she said about she and Magda had this immediate connection.
Yeah.
Although like there was like somewhat of a language barrier, that visually and seeing her video and seeing her work, and I know Niclole very well, and that is certainly the case. It's kind of a very serendipitous that they ended up together.
Yeah.
Marianne Riker's on. Hi, Marianne. She says, welcome to the U.S.
Thank you.
So, yeah. Hey, there's Pete. So one of the conversations I have with Niclole is that she really identified with her, and like seeing how she produces work using collage and figurative stuff like this, although this is doesn't appear to be figurative. I feel like that Niclole, and of course Niclole can speak for herself, but I feel like there is still figurative elements in here. I almost felt like this was like a cross section of like a torso, organs. You know, that's how I looked at it.
Actually.
Right?
Yeah.
Oh, right on. Okay, so I thought those were.
Well, actually, I couldn't quite put my finger on, but I definitely thought body.
Body for sure. Yeah.
Summed that up better than me. But
body and space we have here. You know, the space, bodies within space.
And they share
so
that.
Condensed, isn't it? There's so much surface. There's so much going on in it. I mean, she was wearing this in the film, wasn't she?
There was a piece that she was wearing, but I don't think it was this one specifically. Yeah, I think this one was designed as like a wall piece. But I love that connection to the body. You know, kind of see and it was interesting with the mirror. You know, trying to, not to expose myself. You know, but to get a detail, of this is important because of just the texture and the way that she, processes the paper. And having it be on a mirror really just adds.
It might be quick to read those words off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, please go ahead.
So Magda was given futuristic, vision, catastrophic, hallucination, interior, trauma, immobile, split, disassociation, tunnel, mediation, destruction, fantastical, divide, frozen, chakra, psychedelic, closet, aloof, and celebration.
Yeah.
And then
you want to read the lines from that sent to Niclole?
And then, so Magda sent, the world was too much, breathe in silence, dance the space, wave, boom, apparently, in death, you fly in control.
Detail shot there. Although they have a very different visual, like there's just that I feel like that the major connection is to this bodily thing that's happening.
Yeah. They complement really well. It's funny, these partnerships, these juxtapositions. They seem to be quite yin and yang, even though they have even though they've got so much that might draw them together. They're kind of opposite ends, aren't they?
That's right. Yeah, it feels like that.
Whereas, with Pete, your work paired together, they almost, your pairings are really similar.
It's kind of wild, yeah.
Yeah, because the only thing I had to really go on, obviously I saw some of what James did with his tattoos and some of his prints, but he sent me that little segment which I had in my bit so in that, but I've not seen a lot of the other details, but the way he's got a bit of a carnival of things going on in there, in another way, is exactly, you don't see with the piece, unless you do it with the camera, but there is some work on the top of his piece as well.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we should go above that, because there's a dimensional element here.
So it's
this and actually also below too.
I think he's written.
He has a comment for everybody here.
Oh, is it a comment?
Yeah.
I didn't go into
this. Yeah. Eyes up, head on a swivel. Do not ask, do not find. Smiley face. So I like that element. This is talking to James. It was interesting dealing with the problem of the 20 inches. That. He said, he's like, well, I wanted to do something that's going to be slightly bigger than 20 inches.
Slightly bigger than 20 inches.
And he was like working on it. He's like, and he enjoyed the problem of making it fit within the 20-inch every direction limitation.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. I think we've talked about limitations being very freeing or leading to very interesting places.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't think James would have done something like this without that limitation.
I didn't expect James to be anything like this at all.
Right.
I didn't expect it to be anything like that. It's a great piece.
Yeah, and another thing with you have this dimensionality, this non-traditional wall piece. Both of you share that. They're not square or rectangle, right? One's triangular and circular. So I think that's an interesting, coincidence.
Yeah.
So, should we look
at your pairing?
Sure. Yeah, so
can we get over here? Can we get to the video? We'll get back
we'll get that up here.
Do you want me to take the camera? Or?
So you take that.
Sabina's going to have
Yeah, we'll just take a quick, as we get set up here, quick shot of the rest of the show here.
Where's the one that's got all of them in?
Yeah, I'll get to that. There you go.
So what?
Yeah, so we just want to hold this. This is how I hold it. You know, just stabilize
Perfect,
it.
yeah.
Frank's got that. Yeah, I'll get the piece over here.
And then get the ready up for Joe.
Yeah, so we'll play. We'll
play yours and we go to you. So, is it on? We're going to put it on the other.
Yeah.
All right, sorry about that. We're back, folks. Back live in New Jersey. Basically, now we're going to look at Gillian Knight's piece, who's an Australian artist that's based in the UK, and Frank May, who, apart from being the gallery director of M Galleries, actually has his own piece, which is a video piece. So we go from Gillian. Gillian's not here. She's in London, but with her video, she actually did describe exactly what she did rather beautifully with working with Frank. So we're just going to play the bit of that film and actually show you, and you can take it, and then we'll go on to Frank's piece afterwards. So round we go.
Looks like a blast the volume here.
Frank sent me his 20 words a while ago. They were, 2020 was heavily defined by the COVID-19 pandemic, which led to global social and economic disruption, mass cancellations and postponements. So, fairly miserable stuff. Then the next day, he sent across a new set of words, which were, 2020, I hope so much for the day and the gift of the work for the day is going well. And he asked me which words I liked better, the negative take or the positive one. And I was thinking about this while I was looking at a photograph that he posted on Instagram of a slice of tomato on asphalt. And I thought about that song, You Say Tomato, I Say Tomato, by Ella Fitzgerald and Louis Armstrong. It's all about the different ways of pronouncing the same words, and in the lyrics, the couple discuss how these differences are the reason they should call the whole thing off, knowing, of course, that it would break their hearts to do so. So I couldn't decide between Frank's two sets of words. I didn't really want to choose because both seemed apt descriptions of lockdown. Instead, I wanted to make a painting that could tolerate multiple perspectives, just as we had to with our dramatic mood shifts. Also, I'd been taking a lot of photographs in France where there was blazing sunshine and blue skies in the middle of winter, making hot days out of 2 to 3 degrees. It was such a beautiful coming together of opposites. Just like the word blue, it's the happiness of summer and the darkness of depression. And as for the blues, there's a whole history there of art being a way to express hardship. In the same way, I guess, there's a whole history of how this little painting came into being.
So here's Gillian's work.
I start with the beginning. I mean, I know that sounds a bit silly, but I want to make the point that each piece of work has already begun before the first brushstroke. So I've laid down a part translucent, part white gesso ground that talks of rupture. Then it's a process of staining and building up layers that become more and more logical in their reaction to the beginning, until I reach a composition that projects something impulsive and experimental, which sits comfortably with something very structured. Thank you for watching, and thanks to Frank for his words.
Well, thank you, Gillian. I was very touched by that. Let's pick this back up here. So, yeah, the words, she didn't know where the words came from, and they come from a practice I do with using found language and found poetry. So the first set of words she mentioned, all I did was take the first 20 words from the Wikipedia article on 2020. So that's what that was. It was like just happened to be like a perfect like synthesis of the situation, and it was a very negative take. And then I used the same method to create. I made a poem using found words that I do. I have a Twitter feed that does. I use autofill, like auto words, to create poems. So I started with the number 2020, and then created this found poem using the selections that the phone kind of gives you randomly, and that became the second set of words. So, and I like how both of them, and this is an interesting thing that happened, that my piece and that piece are all about ambiguity and duality. And what I used, I'll read Jillian's. So the words that Jillian sent me are entrapment, home to studio, one cupboard to another, empty streets, sluggish time, bird song, fresh air, kinda nice, gladly not forever.
Kinda nice.
I love, that's probably my favorite word, was the kinda. Yeah. So what I did with this, in a similar way, I like the idea of literally using her words, but not necessarily putting the words in the work. So with this series, I made a video piece that's a video collage that's looping on this tablet here. So the videos come from YouTube. So the way I found them is that I would go into my YouTube search field, and I would make sure I wasn't logged in or anything, so it wasn't like following the algorithm that it was. So I had to try to have this open, and it did on incognito, could have. So I took the first word, so I took the word entrapment, and I put January 2020, and I searched that. And so whatever the first video was, that's what I downloaded from YouTube to use in the collage, in the video collage. And I did that 20 times. So I did 12 months and then another 8 months. And just looped the words. And then with those 20 videos, created the video collage. And so it ended up, like I made it so that the video itself was exactly 20 minutes. So to the second, to the hundredths of a second.
Yeah.
So, and there's audio component and video component, and it's this it's a strange combination of meaningful things and unmeaningful things. So that there's things that are about like news reports about COVID, but there's also videos about makeup. So, and there's this, and you comment on how it's like almost like you're going through
scroll culture.
Yeah, Mark had a pretty great comment about that. He said that it's like you're just like flipping through the channels. And
it's a bit like, I mean, that thought actually, because I remember reading a lot of books that Wim Rauschenberg in the early 60s did those silkscreen paintings. One critic refers to them like the dodging the channels.
Yeah.
And you get the snippet of something going through that's coming up, and that's kind of that sort of thought.
Yeah, definitely.
And that's what I was trying to evoke, was that sense of one disparate thing next to another, and how like it creates this weird tension between it. So watching the video, it speeds up too. So I do, January, February, March, April, May, June, July, and then I repeat that, and it just gets faster and faster and faster. And at the end, the clips are very short, so it becomes this abstraction. That the sonic component's very distorted. So it starts out fairly understandable, but then at the end it just gets weird and glitchy.
Yeah.
So, and the sound is part of that too. Like I wanted that pattern to happen. So it starts slow and it gets faster and faster and faster, and then it just loops again and again.
Yeah.
So I really thank Jillian for working with me. Like we didn't talk a lot, but that wasn't really necessarily like. I think that was interesting, the different ways you could have this experience, and I kind of liked, in a way, I kind of liked the fact that we haven't conversed as much as like I've heard other people's converse, and maybe it might evolve into.
I mean, you probably did a bit more than me, but less than Mark and Ellie, and that's
right. And somewhere in between, right?
Yeah.
But you both got, you both got like a system that is quite interesting.
Right.
So that, Gillian definitely has a system in the way that she produces it, and she explains it so well in the same way you have just now. You just explained, and it was a way of dealing with with your 20 words, but it's the actual. I mean, at the beginning, I was talking about processing, and it's how you process, isn't it? Right. Or how you create your process. You know, it seems to be one of those things that is evident with a lot of the show.
Well, one of the things that come up, you know, it was hard. We got the 20 words from everybody. We got some artists to put little synopsises of their process they went through. We haven't put them out because we haven't got them all, and it's not worth doing unless you do. But there were some various people, and I put them to, well, Frank put something together as well. We kind of read them, and it was interesting that some people were quite systematic in how they did it. Some weren't. Some they exchanged to and fro.
But well, I know it's Frank's glitches at the end. You know, that it's the fact that you over-process and it's going to break down. And that's quite a really nice sort of. Well, it's not nice. It's a sentiment of reality, isn't it? You know, that's the sort of overload that we've got around us.
Well, that's
which is a bit on the negative. But I mean, you know, or on the pessimistic. I mean, it's difficult not to be. It was the thing that really grabbed me about all of this. Is thinking like, is this show going to be? I really keep thinking, is this going to be a pessimistic exhibition? Right, is it going to be another one that makes me just feel like, oh God, the day, you know, the end of the world is nigh. You know. But you know, it's what we have. That's just the way it is.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a lot of colour in it.
It's a lot of
but
I love there is a lot. I feel, and this I was talking about this like in another talk, but how ambiguity is so important in art.
Yeah.
And I love that she speaks to that very directly, and it's something I was very conscious in the way I produced this, and I love the just getting back to the words, you know, I really enjoy limitations. You know, I think limitations, like forcing myself to use only these words and only this video. Like I didn't let my taste come into the selection of it.
Well, that's a really Duchampian thing, isn't it?
Right.
Yeah.
And
not have any time.
And I would have never
indifference, isn't it? That's the one.
Yeah. No. And I love that how I would never have selected these videos. Like in fact, I find them some of them pretty awful.
Well, in a way, that's
or really uninteresting. You know, but they're interesting in that I was forced to keep them.
Well, this takes us to the whole
because of the process. Because of the
this takes
the
us to the start for the whole
it's
thing.
paramount.
Yeah.
Because the thing that was the bridge, of course, was the whole soul and the wit thing that you brought to the table.
Yeah, wasn't it?
And for me, you know, I mean, I've never been a fan of the sculpture so much, but the wall drawings and the way the constructions are transmitted and they're interpreted. I mean, not only for the whole show, we started off, but what you're saying there, in a way, is that.
Correct.
You know, that you had limitations, you had the instructions to interpret.
Yeah.
And you probably ran with that bit more than anybody else.
Absolutely.
You know?
And I wanted to get to solo with that. So thank you. So perfect segue. No, yeah. And
there you go.
So that solo's work. The idea of using language and interpreting language into visual art, the way that a composer writes music and having an orchestra interpret it, is really fascinating to me. And this was like an impetus for this show. And using. Seeing the words now next to the work, this wonderful like tension, disconnect, connection thing that's happening, and so part of the whole process for me putting up the exhibition is that I wanted to not see the work until the first day of the show. So I did this unboxing video that's also on Facebook, so you can take a look at and see. You can see I'm not lying about that. Like I wanted to not see the work, and it took me a few days, a little under a week, to process everything and to figure out where things need to be and how things need to look and how they're connected, and finding the right sequence. That's always something in my mind, you know. And it's a wonderful challenge. I guess I really like challenging myself.
Yeah.
so this is like a way to do that. So I wanted to thank everybody. Thank you to everybody that's watching, and thank you to all the artists, you know, that have showing with me. It's really an honor, you know, to put up this stuff, and seeing it for the first time was really a wonderful discovery.
Yeah.
Now, what will happen, I think, and Frank can correct me if I'm wrong, is that other artists, obviously the American ones, because we're the only two from the UK that are here at this moment, will come in at other times. I think there's and we will add bits to it, and we will add bits to this.
Oh yeah, no, it's just all day.
Is anybody due just now? Or
Ellie said she's on her way.
Right, so we'll take a little break now,
5 minutes.
and then it will come again. Now I realise if anybody is still interested in the UK, you'll probably think your bed's more important than stand up for this. So please do. Please come and have a look and see what's here. And we'll put notices out and stuff.
What I will be doing is I'm just going to keep the stream going, so that I'll just leave that on. And anybody who wants to pop on and make a comment, we may not be talking during the stream. We'll just have it streamed so that you can see it. And then if you pop on, feel free to make a comment.
Oh, and there will be another just open stream for the preview tomorrow night. So if you like, if you want to sit on the party and you can get your own drinking at home, you can join into the preview.
Well, and this is a this is another language thing. Preview means opening. I was like, it took me a second. Like preview, what is that?
That's what you call it, yeah.
But so preview means opening reception.
Yeah, we call it private view.
Private view is also.
But they're not really private anymore.
I was like, why would an opening be called a private viewing? It's weird. It's weird. So yeah, please get in.
Here we go.
So we'll be on. We'll be on all day. So feel free to pop on and check it out.
Bye bye. See you later.
5 minutes. Yeah.
Well, Simon, I think this is a good segue to your piece. So we'll just pause the stream. All right, we are live again with Simon Keller with Hidden Moments. Hi, Simon.
Hi there. All right, so I'm afraid I have really not much to say. What we did, Sandra, and I was paired with Sandra, and my piece, the words, what I did, and I guess in a sense she too, we took the words and focused on that. There was no active communication beyond, because we wanted to look and take these words in and let them do their magic. The word in its real meaning, but also the images and ideas and memories it triggers.
Right.
And of course then tied to 2020, these words, how you relate to those, and there were a lot of synergies, and these words have become our common consciousness and kind of live on, and we have processed them in very different ways, but also ways that relate. So for me, what I can say, when I think about 2020, a year, and everything it did and affected and still does, is a significant part in my life, which is yet just a moment when I go back to the material I work with, which is clay, which is rocks. And so you have that element of deep time, the geological metabolism needs to create clay from the source material rocks. And I take this material and work with that in that moment 2020 as well, and ongoing and before. So within, in a time sense, you have that moment that through the expression becomes deep time.
Deep time.
And maybe vice versa. And with that said, so I focus on that, and then it gives you and of course it's maybe luxury to say that because I didn't die. I didn't catch COVID and so on. And in the beginning it was like, it was always somebody else. Right, it was always, the other. Oh, I know someone who's died. But then into the making, suddenly it was a friend of a friend, or the neighbor who had it and had to spend 6 weeks in hospital and almost died and things. Or didn't make it. So with that in mind, it gives you that deep sense that nothing is forever. And indeed, compared with the timeline of this material, it's just in a blink, but also this material is not forever. And it's changing, and so do we. So if you sit back, I guess the takeaway for me is that working with clay is extremely therapeutic, and you kind of can sit back and say, yes, in the end, everything dies, and that is the normal cause of life, and it is not necessarily the end, but just the beginning of something new. Just like this material originally was a rock turned into clay. If it were to go back into the ground and there would be, I don't know, an earthquake or volcanic eruption, it would very well turn into rock again, even by the own process of firing it, making this malleable material into something very hard that is rock-like.
Right.
So, with that in mind, we are blessed to live here.
Yeah,
let's cherish it.
For sure. Thank you. And I just have one. I feel like what's established here is this piece of architecture, and it's this very stable, unstable feeling.
Right.
You know, it feels like this paradox. As I'm looking at a paradox.
Right.
You know, it looks both at the same time. And so you have this home that's
right.
I feel like is symbolic of that ambiguity. And then you have this, you know, skyscape next to it. So I feel like I'm looking at a landscape, you know, between your work, like this piece of a home, and then the setting that the home's in.
Right.
And that's what this window piece, I feel like, together says. You know, there's like this domestic setting, but you know, there's a dark and a light to it.
A fragility.
A fragility.
Yeah.
Right, thank you.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, and that's a good point, because when you think about it, it's we are craving to build something, to make something that maybe lasts forever and is being remembered, but it is not. It is in itself vulnerable and built to change. So that these opposites of something that is sturdy and rock solid, so to speak, but it's just a little shake can change it.
That's right, for sure.
It's the hard material, but then pottery or ceramics is always something you need to touch. So you have the hard, rough material, but if you touch this part, there's something soft about the touch to the surface.
Sure.
So also these seeming differences.
And that's also
Sorry.
Right.
the ash.
Yes, the ash. That's right. Yeah, that's right. And that's another thing that. So I use wild clay, different forms of wild clay, or reverse engineered clay. That's reverse engineered clay is basically when you take clays that are industrially processed for mass production or for consumption, you take these and you mix them and expose them to the elements again, and by doing that you kind of bring them back into a state that resembles the wild clay. So that's what I do with these clays. And then I have natural wood ash that makes the glaze, the glossy part here, and that is, again, you have an organic material, wood, that turns into ash, and then the high fire turns it into an anorganic material, the glaze, which coats the clay and becomes part of it in the way it fuses.
See everyone together.
Well, the installation is a wonderful introduction to the show.
Thank you.
You know, and I think that letting this be the first thing people see is really exciting.
Oh, and one more thing. This is, as it is now, the unfinished.
Yes, right, and that's right. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, thank you.
Another part tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
A small ceremony or ritual or performance, whichever way you want to name it, which then makes it complete, because the title is Hidden Moment.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you.